Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Real Spill, a podcast where I spill on all things multifamily advocacy and how we as industry professionals can work with our elected officials, stakeholders, and allies to bring about change for the rental housing industry. My guests are subject matter experts whose unique perspectives will help listeners understand how the issues impact them. Let's get into The Real Spill. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Real Spill here on the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Katie Spillers, and with me today is one of my very favorite colleagues, Shanae Auguste. Welcome, Shanae.
Hey, everybody.
So excited for our conversation today after I told Shanae after I hosted Aisha Beverly a few weeks ago and heard some statistics, I'm like, wow, we have a history-making Black woman within our firm. Shanae, will you tell listeners what it is that you do, what role you serve in our firm, and what that means as far as for a woman of color?
I would be happy to. So as Katie stated, my name is Shanae Auguste, and I am an attorney at Loebsack & Brownlee, which is the same law firm that Katie works at. I am currently the Virginia partner. Loebsack & Brownlee just opened up our doors to service Virginia landlords in about September or so. So since then, that has been my primary focus. Before that, I was one of the North Carolina partners. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm ready for you guys to, learn a little bit more about me today.
Me too, Shanae. We always have such a good time when we get together and we get to travel together a little bit and see new cities. We have a great time, and I'm excited for listeners to hear. Now, when in your life did you say, okay, this career, I want to be an attorney? What was that like for you? When did you realize this?
Funny story, because, you always hear about when people are asked this question, they're like, oh, I knew when I was 7 years old that I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. No, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a reporter or journalist. And so I did go, to college, and I majored in journalism. And it's funny, my lifelong dream was to be a beat reporter for the Boston Red Sox. I'm from Boston. I love the Red Sox. I think everyone at the firm knows I'm obsessed with the Red Sox. So that was my goal. But I wound up graduating from college in spring 2009, which, as many people know, many people who are about my age know, but that was, a couple years after the housing market collapse and, the Great Recession was going on, and newspapers were folding left and right. And so I had to start looking at, alternatives. And I was like law school was always one of my backup plans, like in case, I couldn't quite, edge my way into the career that I wanted to, because I had always been, pretty good at debating and all that good stuff. Everyone, for whatever reason, is like, yeah, I was a good debater. That's why I went to law school, I'm like, that was my backup plan, and so in 2009 is when I, began studying for the LSAT. I was admitted to law school in 2010 and graduated in 2013. And the rest is history. Here I am in front of you guys. So it was kind of like luck and happenstance and indecisiveness that kind of led me here.
Oh yeah, life is so interesting that way, that like when our plans change, things are really falling into place for us to align for our best good for our future.
Absolutely.
And so how did you get into like landlord-tenant? Sometimes I call what we do landlord-tenant eviction law. I don't know if that there's necessarily like a name like that for it, but how did you find your way into that space?
So I kind of took a step out on faith. So when I was in law school, I went from wanting to, practice IP, intellectual property law, which is like, copyrights, trademarks, things like that. But, if you want to get into like some aspects of IP law, you kind of have to have a scientific background, like if you're getting into patents and things like that. So I was like, okay, well, let me switch gears a little bit. And my last 2 years of law school, I focused most of my, I guess, extracurricular activities on serving the underserved. So, for example, like my first year of law school, I spent my spring break in Biloxi, Mississippi, um, helping people, fill out claims from the BP oil spill, things like that, right? I interned at the Legal Services of Southern Piedmont after my 2L year, which is a legal services organization that is, I think they might be partnered with Legal Aid North Carolina, but it's located in Charlotte. And so I was a member of their tax controversy clinic where you help low income people, settle tax debts, file their tax returns, things like that. And so when I graduated from law school, I was like, yeah, I want to help the people. I want to fight the man. And so I was graciously chosen to become a fellow at Legal Aid of North Carolina's Charlotte office. And they placed me. It's not like I had to say, they placed me in the housing unit because that was where the most need was. And I fell in love with it. Like, I loved it. Like representing tenants in court, trying to figure out different ways that you can, save their homes and things like that. Like, I really enjoyed that. But as you see now, I'm on the other side, but we'll get there. We'll get there in due time.
That's awesome. So your passion for helping people was evident from the start. You're like, okay, now I have this new skill set.
Yep.
I can go in and help these people. I can't imagine how rewarding that must have been. And probably the hundreds of people whose lives you were able to touch through this.
Absolutely.
And the people that you had to have inspired that maybe said, hey, you know what? I want to do this too.
Yeah. Yep. And it's so weird because, like, I never think about the impact that I have on others. And so, like, when people come up to me, they're like, Shanae, you inspired me to do this. You inspired me to go to law school. I'm like, what, me? That's always so humbling to me. I appreciate that.
Of course, we never know, who's watching us.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, we never know who's watching us.
You
want to
got
make sure
it.
my dogs were not about to have a bark fest in there. But they're watching you. Charlotte and Max, they're being inspired.
Hey, dogs.
But so you ended up representing residents in court, which as a property manager, that's my background. I tried to have the conversations with my residents in my office that I have seen a judge have with them in court, because your whole goal, if you can help it, is not to get there, is not to get there in the first place. And I think in most places, the only remedy for default of non-payment of rent, unless you have like a legitimate maintenance defense, is payment of rent. And so it's just seeing how far the management company, it's negotiation. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. All day.
Yep. Like how long can you, I would almost get in trouble with my management company because I would wait too late. We didn't have a mandatory, you have to file after
by this day.
Yeah. And so I would not file till really the end of the month. And I never did it on a Friday or a Monday because people get paid.
Yeah. Yep.
And you don't want to file that cause of action. And in some states like South Carolina, it's on there forever. Amen. It's really a late payment, but they have the right to that timely payment. So they go ahead and file. And there's ways around it to sometimes as a manager, I found that you could work with your people. And it's not always the case. Some companies have a very strict policy. And now looking back, I'm sure I followed the fair housing laws there. I did it for everyone consistently across the board, unless the only common denominator, if I had to go ahead and file, is if they would not communicate with me at all, if they're just crickets, that kind of thing. They're like, the likelihood of them actually coming through with this, if they won't even communicate, is kind of slim to none.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you end up with L&B? Like, were you across from one of our attorneys at one time and someone was like,
That's what happened. That's exactly what happened. So, like, one of my very first cases at Legal Aid, I think this was a case that was handed to me on day one. And I was like, what? I frequently had cases against Loebsack and Brownlee. The attorneys I usually worked with were Chris Loebsack, Jared Schmidt, and one of our former partners, Stephanie Richmond. So those were like the main three our office would typically have cases against. And I think I have more cases against Chris. And we had negotiations. We would meet in court and talk about cases. We would have phone conversations and talk about cases. And I think he saw something in me that I didn't see, because oh my God, um, I'm like, Lord, is this going to have to be taken out? I thought Chris was an a-hole when I was on the other side. I certainly did. I thought he was very flippant, and I didn't like him. And so, like, whenever we would, communicate with each other, I would, try to give it to him a little bit, right? And then, like, when first of all, he found out I was leaving legal aid before some of my coworkers did. I don't know how he did that, but I remember, like, it was probably a couple days after I had left legal aid. He called me and he's like, I don't know if you have any plans for a job, but you need to come work for me, is essentially how it went. So, like, it's funny because I never had to do that whole sending out like 8,000 resumes, begging, the managing principals at law firms to hire me, things like that. Like, I was very lucky in that I was given the opportunity to show what I can do by somebody who also saw that in me. And it's just funny now because, like, when Chris and I will reminisce about it, he'll be like, man, you were a little firecracker back then. And I'm like, am I not still? Like, that's why you love me, right? But yeah, that's exactly how I found the firm. That was, my goodness, 11 years now. I am entering my 11th year of working as an attorney for Loebsack and Brownlee. Yep.
That's so cool.
That's insane.
It is. It is. Time goes by so quickly. And,
Yep.
That door, you didn't know it, but every time you were challenging him in court, there was something in his brain that was going, huh.
Uh-huh.
He probably had already thought about, like, and it'll be interesting. He's going to come on in a few weeks too and say, you were thinking, like, okay, if this one right here is ever in the market, I am snatching her up. He's smart in stacking the bench in the firm with smart, capable, talented, passionate people.
Absolutely. Yeah. He just has a knack for that,
Yep, he does. He does. And I've said I work with some great teams on site, but I have never worked with a more competent team than the team that we have at the firm. It's truly remarkable that rarely to never is there a letdown. Like, if somebody on the team,
right,
they understand what merit they have, and they know what the weight of the ball that they have in their hands is, and that they cannot drop it. And we don't like to lose.
Absolutely.
And I think that's so cool. And now, when were you approached to be on the partner track? Like, what does that look like for you, or what did that look like for you?
That's another one of those things where I was like, oh, me? Because, like, my main thing was I wanted to practice law. That's what I wanted to do. So I would, keep my head down. I would, review my eviction cases. I would go to court, and I was always in court. When I was like an associate attorney, I was in court all the time. And so I remember Chris asked me if I would be willing to move from our Charlotte office to the Raleigh office, for like promotional growth and things like that. And the Raleigh office didn't have very many attorneys, didn't have as many attorneys as the Charlotte office did. So I was like, yeah, I'd be willing to move. This was in, I think, summer 2016. And I remember it was in 2019, like towards the end of 2019, where he started talking to me about partnership. And I was like, huh? By this time in 2019, I'm a managing attorney, so I've been promoted a couple times. And I was like, wow, I just never thought that I never saw that in the cards for myself, namely because, when I first started working at L&B, it wasn't a partner track law firm. That was just not the sort of firm that it was. But, in time, we kind of changed that model a little bit. And when he, posited to me the idea of becoming a partner, I was like, let me think about that. And so, I took like a month to think about it or whatever. And then in January of 2020, right before the world changed, is when I became partner. And I tell you what, there has never been a steeper learning curve. Like it is night and day. It's night and day from being, a managing attorney, from being, a senior associate, from being an associate. Because once you become a partner, it's, part of your responsibility to keep the business itself running. So it's not just you practicing law, it's you making sure the business is on, a trajectory to be successful, to be profitable, and to make sure that, you can pay payroll, things like that, right? So it's more so the business aspect of things, when you become a partner. But you still have to, you still have your responsibilities that you have to do. We still go to court. Like when I became partner, I went to court more. It's fun. People are like, oh, no, you become partner, you just sit back in the office and chill and answer questions all day. No, not me. And honestly, not any of the other partners at Losac and Brownlee. Like the work increased exponentially. Not only that, but like when you become a partner, you get more face time at conferences and things like that. So you have to juggle, managing your team, making sure, your legal responsibilities are still being completed and fulfilled, like, reviewing cases, going to court. But hey, you might have to go to a conference next week. You might have to go to NARPM next week in Raleigh or something. Or you might have to go to, advocate in Vegas or wherever it is this year. So like learning to manage all of that was probably like the most difficult thing that I had to learn. But being a partner here, it's not competitive like it would be at other traditional law firms. Like everyone is always willing to help you understand things. We're all in this together, right? And that's one of the that's one of the beautiful things about being a partner at this particular law firm.
Yeah, I've found that too with the attorneys that I've had the fortune to be able to work with, that they come oftentimes from another firm where they're traumatized. And I'll say this, especially, it's my podcast, it's real, especially the female attorneys.
Yeah.
They've been in misogynistic environments, toxic environments where their mental health was heavily impacted. And so going from the shift of that environment to what we have, they were walking at first on eggshells, thinking like the other shoe's going to drop, like something's going to happen. And then slowly they realize like it's not going to happen. Like,
oh, this is different. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Like there's people here, and those of you guys who are partners, it's your mentors, you're training that next generation. You're you're pouring into them, and the ability that Chris saw in you to do that in the Charlotte office, I'm certain that he had no doubt that you could replicate it in Raleigh and now in Virginia. So did you have to go back, like they call it waiving in, is that right, or petitioning in? Did you get to do that, or did you have to take that bar?
So I waived into Virginia. So Virginia usually has what we call reciprocity or comity with other states. One of those states being North Carolina. So essentially, all you have to do is have been practicing for like, I think it's like 5 years or something like that. You fill out an application for waiver by admission, and then you take some CLEs and whatnot. The process usually takes around 3-4 months or so. And then after that, like, you're complete. You waive in, you get sworn in, and now you're, a fully licensed member of the Virginia State Bar. So not too difficult.
Yeah, that's awesome. That it's great when that sweet spot can be there, because I know that we've had attorneys who just missed it. Like, missed it.
Exactly.
Oh, so that's awesome.
That's terrible, man.
Yeah, it's great that you didn't have to go
God,
through
I hate it for them.
I know. We were just talking off camera about a couple of our colleagues who our thoughts are with that are taking bars for different states in the next week. So,
oh boy.
Oh yeah, Godspeed to them. And
I know.
Oh, I can only imagine though, like when you were saying you became partner right when the world shut down, I could only imagine what it was like, and feel free to elaborate. When you have a firm whose primary focus is eviction, and then all of a sudden there's a moratorium on evictions, like, did work just stop, or did it slow down, or what did that look like?
So funny story. I was on sabbatical in March of 2020. And I was in Bali in Indonesia. So like all of this COVID stuff, I was like, what are they talking about? Because it was like pretty much non-existent, over in Indonesia at that time. Then I come back to the States and I'm seeing like empty shelves where toilet tissue used to be, empty shelves where, hand sanitizer used to be, bleach, Lysol. And then not only that, I came back and at the time it was Governor Cooper, he was the governor of North Carolina. He signed an executive order for a shelter in place. And I was like, wait a minute, I gotta stay home. What is going on here? Like, and then shortly after that, so towards the end of March 2020 is when President Trump signed the CARES Act into law. And as many people who listen to this podcast, I'm sure are aware, the CARES Act instituted a 90-day eviction moratorium for the failure to pay rent if the landlord's property received federally backed mortgage loans. So that was in place from March 27, 2020 until like July 29th of 2020. And quite literally, things came to a screeching halt. It's astounding to me the fact that we were able as an eviction law firm to overcome that, right? And I'm like, we can overcome that, which felt like the apocalypse to us. We can overcome anything at all. Like we got super creative during that time, like because there were, most of our clients could not file non-payment of rent evictions. We got creative, like what are some other lease violations that you have knowledge of the tenant, having committed? So we would evict tenants for like, failure to maintain utilities, having unauthorized pets and occupants. We would draft termination notices for them, things of that nature. But yeah, man, it was really tough. Like we would field questions all the time from, various employees at the firm asking, we're going to get furloughed. Is this going to happen? And I'm happy to say that fortunately, we did not have to furlough any employee, nor did any employee have to take a pay cut or anything like that. So we persevered and we came over it. But man, like you ask any landlord's attorney who was practicing during COVID, how it felt. It kind of felt like being in like a desert when there's no one else around and like tumbleweeds just like like rolling through the terrain. Like that's really how it felt. But here we are, we're back and we're much more resilient than we were before.
Yeah, and better, prepared, because I don't think
absolutely, yeah,
no company realized they needed a disaster plan.
Yeah, until then, absolutely. Yep.
And I know
fun times, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. It's that time that finally put the nail in the coffin of I can't do this anymore myself, being on site. Just the ridiculousness. But I know it had to have gotten the firm more clients, and the company I worked for, that's when they joined, because if we had gotten something wrong, we had a Fannie Mae backed mortgage at the property that I managed, and one of our sister properties had Freddie Mac, and it was also a HUD loan, so they had REAC inspections. It's one of the largest assets in our area. 40 something acres, over 500 units. They ended up refinancing to get out from underneath that loan.
Right.
But the property I worked at, managed, it did not. We refinanced, but it was still a federally backed mortgage.
Okay.
And when we saw that, like, if we got something wrong, our broker in charge, like the president of the company, could go to jail. Like, I did not want that on me.
Right. Yeah.
As a human being capable as any of us are of making mistakes. So we needed to mitigate that risk. And so we ended up hiring the firm through that. And Chris was really good to give those webinars very regularly to the apartment associations. If it had not been for the firm, I would have probably lost my mind during that time, because it was unprecedented times, and I'd been in the industry since 2002. I mean, my entire professional adult career was in property management, and this had never been something I think I laughed about. God, if I get one more complaint of somebody smoking weed, I'm good, because everybody was home and they're stressed, they're bored, and I was making phone calls and having conversations I never thought that I would have during that time, but was so thankful for the firm. And definitely the unauthorized occupant thing was a huge deal. And it's so hard to
Mhm.
prove that. Like, you don't,
It is.
it's so hard to prove that. But I was like super sleuth. I found pictures on my phone the other day where I was going by taking pictures every single day of this particular.
Sometimes that's what you have to do. Yep. Sometimes that's what you have to do to prove your case.
Oh yeah, I was
Yep.
undercover, and Ryan, who was with us at the time, one of the attorneys in South Carolina at the time, I know he thought this lady is crazy because I just uploaded like a ton of pictures into there, and it even gone on their social media and found where like their cover photo was
Yep.
my property. Like they are
Exactly.
living there, and
Hmm.
it wouldn't. Sometimes if they didn't make my phone ring, I didn't make a big deal about it, but they were
Right.
making my phone ring. There were noise complaints and other things. And then it turns out they had falsified their application and
Of course they
yeah.
did.
And so and it got by me. I mean, that was, it was a ding to my little ego, but it got by me and I had to get them out because the person living in my property was on parole for 2 murders that were committed in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't say that.
No. But the thing is, Shanae, if they had told me up front, you know me, if they had told me up front, we need a place to live. He served his
Yeah.
debt to society.
Yep.
If they would have been honest, I would have said, okay, you need to find an individual landlord who's not going to look at your criminal history. Like,
Right.
don't waste your time here and don't try to play with me because you're not going to win.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I can imagine the cases that came through during that time were all
Fun times, man.
yeah, of that nature. And what a time to be made partner. And I can imagine like back then, did it occur to you that you were making history and you were making Black history?
I think at the time, no, because I'm always very cognizant of the fact that I'm either the only Black woman or one of, the only Black women. Like that's something I've kind of been cognizant of my entire life, like growing up and being in grade school, like I was often the only, Black kid in the English class or something. I went to undergraduate at, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Like there were classes I took there where I was the only Black person involved in XYZ, right? But like, I think it's because it was so like, I guess my time up until my time at Loebsack and Brownlee up until I made partner was relatively like routine. I never really thought like, oh my God, I'm about to be the first Black partner, Jesus. But also, let me tell y'all, I was Loebsack and Brownlee's first Black employee. Period. 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 So like when I first started working here, I was the only one here that looked like me. The only one, right? But like I think because I'm so humble and I shy away from accolades and from, things like that, that it just never really hit me until like I had a conversation with Chris about it, probably like very shortly after I got promoted. Honestly, it was in 2020, so it probably was around like the George Floyd times and things like that, when there was a lot of like racial issues going on in the country. I think that's kind of when I was like, oh, okay, like I have a very unique place at the table, and I need to do what I can to start taking advantage of that, right? But like I think the more and more I speak to Chris about things like that, the more it hits me like, oh my God, like I'm kind of important. Like, and I'm like, Jesus, the one thing that you don't want to do is become important at your job. I'm just joking. Kind of. Kind of. But yeah, like now it's 2025. I've been a partner for half a decade now. And like now more than ever, especially with the political climate, I am very cognizant of what I look like, who I'm around, things of that nature. Absolutely. You kind of have to be, like I don't quote unquote play the race card, as some people like to say, but like I am very cognizant of the fact that I am the only, African American person on our executive team. I'm the only African American person on our partners on the partners list, right? Like those things, you do think about, especially as race and ethnicity, nationality start to become more and more of a hot button topic in the country.
And what is it meant to you now that you look back on it? Like, are there times, like you said, like, oh my God, like this this is history making, and that there are other women who look like you that are looking up to you, and that may have even decided to join the firm because they went on the website and saw
Yep.
themselves.
Yep. That's that's wild stuff, man. Like that's some wild stuff. Like case in point, one of the law clerks that we have here in our Raleigh office, Loebsack and Brownlee's Raleigh office, I met her through, I think it was like a bar association event. It was like coffee with a lawyer or something like that, where you met like a 1L law student. And you kind of just chatted about, how it is to be a lawyer and, little cute things like that. Like, I did not think that one meeting with Aaliyah, that's her name, would morph into, what it's become now. Like, Aaliyah has been with the firm. She's clerked for the firm since her 1L year of law school. This was back when, like, Loebsack and Brownlee didn't have law clerks or anything like that. And it was always like my goal to get one. I was like, I need a clerk. I was like, accountant, listen, I understand they busy. They have assistants. I need an assistant. I'm busy. So I was like, I went to Chris and I was like, look, so I know we've never had law clerks here, but we need to get this one, please. Like, I'm willing to do anything to hire this person. And so, we hired her. And she is, knock on wood, the bar exam is next week. She is gearing up to be our next Virginia attorney. Like, just from one cup of coffee at Starbucks and talking to her, and she's African American as well. And she often, like she's really sweet and sentimental. So she'll like write cards to me and like write letters to me saying like how much she looks up to me, how I've inspired her, how, she stayed at the firm because I was here and things like that. And honestly, every time I hear that, it's earth shattering. It really is. I'm like, there's no way. Little old boring me, a game changer like that. Like that's kind of insane, right? Like, it's not like I set out to change the world or set out to inspire people. It just happens, it just happens. It happens that way. And I think it's more special to you when you're humble about it, right? And that's like one of my character traits that I really appreciate about myself. The fact that I am very humble and I shy away from accolades. I don't like being recognized for anything. I don't like when people are like, oh my gosh, Shanae, you helped me. Like, just no, just take the favor and go on about your day. Because it makes me all flustered. It makes me blush. It makes my cheeks get all warm and hot. I'm like, oh, I don't like this. But like, I do recognize that there are people whose lives I have affected positively. And I don't take that for granted at all. I really don't. You can't, you can't. And I really appreciate that. That's like one of the best things about being a partner here.
Oh yeah. And they're inspired. They're more likely to pay it forward,
Absolutely.
They are going to be that person for someone else and someone else's career. Because
you got it.
I think we sometimes don't go through things for ourselves. We go through them and for other people so that they can see this path that maybe they didn't think was a possibility for themselves. And when they see someone who's walked that walk, who's like yourself, and you're very humble and willing to walk alongside them and continue to mentor them, pour into them, so that they can be their best and highest self too. It's truly remarkable. And I'm thankful that you came on here today with me, because
my pleasure.
I wanted people to hear that about you. You do enjoy your job and you enjoy giving back to others. And what is your favorite part of being an attorney? Is it the mentorship? Is it the research or something new, a new challenge?
Oh boy. So I'm a little bit of a nerd. So like, I love doing legal research. That's one of the things that absolutely makes my day. I am a lot unlike a lot of my colleagues here, because they're like, what the hell are you doing looking up cases, like researching cases on a Friday night? Like, go out or something, like get a life. And I do have a life, but like things like that really, like, they really get me going. Like, just seeing how much landlord-tenant law has changed, like since, let's say, 2013 when I became a lawyer to now. Like just being able to to watch that change through the statutes and watch that change through case law that comes out. I love that. I love that stuff. Like that is what really like gets me going. Additionally, like the fact that there are people that rely on me like daily is that's also very humbling. Like, for example, I have a team in Virginia, like I have a legal assistant. I have, an attorney up there as well. Like she and I, we tackle court together. And she's new to the landlord tenant law, although she's practiced civil litigation before. And like, she'll email me, call me, text me, and ask me, different questions. And I understand that she relies on me, because I've been in this particular, this industry for a while and she's new to it. So like there are things that I need to be there for her on, right? Like just be like having this role in and of itself is like one of the most awesome experiences I've had. Like, yeah, being a partner is hard. It's hard as hell. There's an insane, learning curve, like there were some things that I'm just like, what in the hell is that? And I have to like ask somebody or research it or, ask Chris. But like, honestly, being a partner has like, in a way, it's made me more human. Like I'm not just a cog in the machine. Like I was made a partner because I stand out. Like Chris sees something in me that sometimes I don't see in myself, something that he believes is going to benefit the firm. And I appreciate that. Like just being a partner in and of itself, just name only, has been like a wonderful experience for me so far.
I love that. And that you get to lead your team and inspire them. It's like checking a box that sometimes we didn't know that was going to be so fulfilling to check.
Right. Absolutely. Because I tell you what, like sometimes during the day to day, I'm like, what the hell did I sign up for? I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this at 6 p.m.? Why am I driving back from this event at 10 p.m.? Things like that. And you're wondering, you're wondering to yourself, is it worth it? Like, why am I doing this? And you might not see it in the moment, but yeah, it is worth it. It absolutely is. Yeah, and I love that about working here.
Yeah, it's that ripple effect. You're putting it out there, and I do believe in the law of attraction and manifestation and all that stuff, and that you get out what you put out there because it has to come back to you. So I know that you're going to continue to have your steps ordered and that your destiny is manifested. It's out there because you've put so much good out there into the firm. And you talked a little bit about case law. Now, Virginia is a little different, and this is information, not advice. Disclaimer, Liz has taught me well. Yeah. So, Virginia operates a little differently now because we talked about the CARES Act, which, the property I manage, we had to give a 30-day to pay or vacate. Did that go away by case law in Virginia? Was it a Supreme Court decision? Like, remind me of how that happened, that it's not necessarily, I don't say it's not recognized, but is it not recognized?
So there was a decision by the Virginia Court of Appeals that came out in November of last year. And it didn't quite do away with the CARES Act like the Iowa Supreme Court did. But it basically said that if you look at the plain meaning of, I think it's section 4024C of the CARES Act.
I'm a nerd too.
That's the 30-day notice to vacate provision. Basically, the Virginia Court of Appeals looked at that provision and they were like, we read this as meaning that the tenant does not have to leave the premises within 30 days, right? So essentially what they're saying is, as long as the tenant is not forced to physically leave the premises by way of the lockout or the set out, then totally fine. So Virginia has a state law that says if a landlord wants to evict for the failure to pay rent, you have to send a 5-day demand to pay or quit. I mean, you can send a 15-day demand to pay or quit if you want to. I don't know why you would do that, but it has to be at least 5 days, right? And so with this case, Virginia basically said, as long as your late notice meets the provisions of the Virginia the Virginia Residential Landlord-Tenant Act, or the VRLTA, as long as you're giving your tenants 5 days to pay or move out, you can go ahead and file that case if you're a covered property under the CARES Act. The only thing that you cannot do is schedule the lockout within that 30-day time frame. And the way that Virginia works, I mean, hell, the way that most courts in the jurisdictions are, the way that most courts work in the jurisdictions that Loebsack and Brownlee is in, and that would be, both the Carolinas, Georgia, and Virginia, like, it's kind of rare to see for a landlord to get a court date within 30 days, in a lot of these places. So it's not really even an issue for us. We just have to make sure that when it comes time for our client to, execute the writ of eviction, as it's called in Virginia, that more than 30 days since they sent that late notice out has passed. That's all we have to do, which is awesome, right? Just wish North Carolina would get with the program. Like, North Carolina is like the weird one. Like, you still have to follow the whole 30-day thing. You can't file the case early. You have to wait until the full 30 days has passed. But just a little bit of wiggle room in like the other states that our firm practices in. But yeah, that's pretty much Virginia in a nutshell. So CARES Act is still there by name. That's pretty much it. But as long as you meet that, that requirement, that 5-day to pay or quit requirement, you're good to go.
And it's been so interesting to see the changes starting to happen, especially with the Iowa Supreme Court decision. That one was monumental, and
that was nice.
Yeah, it's interesting because what occurred to me as a property manager was I could not enforce my lease agreement. This person, it's like contract law, like I went to college to be a paralegal. So, I love my little rap. So I didn't pass the bar, but I know a little bit, So I'm like, they agreed to these provisions in the contract. And that part of the lease was not worth the paper it was written on because I could not enforce it.
Exactly.
And it wasn't doing them any good to get that far behind, because once you file, they're already 30 days behind. And it's like, oh my goodness. And especially say, for instance, if my husband and I, we'll have our house paid off in 2039. Say we want to rent it out. And I still have my property management license. I ain't letting that thing go. And
I know that's right.
Right. So say I throw an LLC and I decide, I'm going to rent my place out. And say I refinance or something and I get federal funds to do so. And if that was still around and you're making a mortgage payment, and you could lose your house. And I can imagine
absolutely
the mom and pop and the small landlords that went out of business when, during that time, especially, there were ERAP funds available and they were coming through if people would just have communicated, which I was very fortunate at my property that they did. And now the lady who was helping me, who was with the Greenville Housing Fund at the time, her name is Tina Belgi. She's running for Greenville City Council, and I'm super excited about that. But she helped me get $40,000 and keep 14 apartment homes occupied. But it was ERAP paid directly to me and not to the resident, because I saw them Amazon trucks go through my property. They were not bringing me my rent money.
I mean, new cars, you name it.
Oh yeah, it was happening. It was serious that time. But seeing some of the states start to take back the right, it's like a state's rights versus the federal government thing. And I think if anything can be accomplished during this administration that's wanting to take things less of a federal issue and put them back on states. The new notice to vacate bill, CARES Act, was just reintroduced, the Respect State Housing Laws Act. And, when we do go to advocate here in just a little over a month in DC, we're hoping to get co-sponsorship for this legislation. And it's even talked about, to put it into an appropriations package where, Congress won't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And it goes back because then we're going to have a learning curve, because we're going to be answering the questions of how do I return to normal?
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm ready for that. I'll answer those types of questions all day long. I think the fact that it has been almost 5 years and the CARES Act is still bothersome, is still a thing, is absolutely insane. Like, I think it's ridiculous. And it's just causing landlords and tenants both to go, further and further into the hole.
Yeah. And I'm seeing now, because what I do for the firm now is I'm kind of like the watchdog and just seeing what's going on out there. And I'm seeing, like places like Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, they actually had evictions decrease. Like that wave didn't come like that they were thinking was going to come. And
the tsunami of evictions that everyone was worried about.
It never really
didn't
happened.
Yeah, it didn't happen in a lot of places. Yep. No. Exactly.
And we're trying, because we have to be, housing, in my opinion, is a bipartisan. It's not a partisan issue. It's a people issue. And if we're trying to provide affordable housing to residents, having any type of restriction on an eviction filing is not the way to do that. It's building more housing, reducing those barriers. Yeah, like we've got to have more. It's supply and demand. Get those prices down, and where your average person can afford their rent. But one thing that is hurting them, and I'm seeing a push for this in several states, and including South Carolina, where the American Civil Liberties Union is working with, say, a senator like in South Carolina, that's Carl Allen. We have Senate Bill 56 that would aim to seal all eviction records, which we know that's a non-starter. We can't seal everything, but we're working with them. And I know it may seem like strange bedfellows, but to come up with scenarios where an eviction record could be sealed, like if the resident successfully defended their case, or if they paid, if both parties are whole and just the filing is on their public record. If a manager, and I've seen it, and I used to have them call me, even though I wasn't an attorney because I was government affairs chair and all this jazz, my colleagues would call me and of course quickly put a stop to that when I came to the firm, because it's different given peer to peer, just this is how I'm doing this, or this is how I'm navigating, versus the unauthorized practice of law.
Right.
Being able to read the public index and knowing that, like, not all of the courts are going to update that public index. That information may not be correct.
Right.
So we're seeing a big, it's one thing I'm seeing within like really the last 72 hours, more and more legislation across the country is being introduced to seal those records. And it's going to be interesting to see what comes of that. Have you guys, do they have sealing in Virginia?
So Virginia is, I really like this state. Basically anything and everything about landlord-tenant law is codified by statute in Virginia. So Virginia actually does have civil expunctions. So the way it works is if you're, dismissing a case against a tenant for any reason, that case, as long as you dismiss it, that action will be expunged from the tenant's record within 30 days. If you want to non-suit a case, non-suit is, I don't think I have enough evidence to proceed. Let me think about it and schedule my court date later. If you want to non-suit a case, you have 6 months in which to refile that case. Otherwise, it's expunged from the tenant's record as well. So Virginia does have these things. I don't understand why it's so easy for Virginia. No, never mind. I understand why it's so easy for Virginia to to have these things on the books. North Carolina, we've been trying to get civil expunction or at the very least eviction expunctions on the books for a number of years. It's not going anywhere. It's very rare that you see, these sorts of things that would benefit, absolutely benefit the tenant being done in more jurisdictions. But luckily, I can at least say that, Virginia has it. North Carolina obviously does not have it yet. And I'm not sure about Georgia and South Carolina. But there, it's at least in some places out there.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see a push for it. Just seeing the amount of legislation that's being introduced on the state level, just really within the past 72 hours. That's one thing that might be my next little write up, just to keep you guys informed of.
Okay, yeah, that'd be cool.
Of what I'm seeing, because I'm like, wow, this is interesting, and it's part of a greater movement. And we'll see, because in South Carolina, we don't have anything like that. And if someone pays late, like say they pay, because South Carolina has a 5-day to pay or quit, say they pay and it's a non-covered property, on the 11th or the 12th or whatever every month, and the person has had eviction filed on them, they'll have a rule to vacate potentially every month. Like it's crazy, like to skim the public index and see one person with that many.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, that's insane.
Oof. And but then if you look into the case, like the details of the case, a writ was never requested. So this person was not actually evicted.
Exactly.
And South Carolina keeps, I call it popping hot, but we keep popping hot for evictions being filed. And I think it's because they're reporting an eviction as a rule to vacate and not an executed writ.
Exactly. Yep. And that's one of the things that a lot of people, I guess, outside of the multifamily industry don't realize is like the vast majority of eviction filings do not end up with the landlord needing to execute the writ of possession. Like it's probably like it might even be 1/4 at this point. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that unfortunately, unless you're like delving deeper into like the actual court records, you're not really like a landlord's not really going to know, a potential landlord is not really going to know what happened with the case. But I'm like, I think there is a very strong need for, eviction expunctions. I mean, across the state. I mean, not across the state, but across the country. Like it really needs to be done everywhere. Like one of the things that always concerns me is like when a client will submit an eviction case against a defendant and oops, I didn't mean to file on them. I credit their payment to somebody else's account by mistake. And is there anything I can do, Shanae? And I'm like, well, in North Carolina, no. And because usually it occurs in North Carolina. I'm like, no, there's no way to remove that. Whereas in Virginia, I'm like, hey, just dismiss the case. And within 30 days, it'll be expunged. I think there is a dire need for civil expunctions across the country. Absolutely.
And it's funny you mentioned that. That was one of our scenarios because I had not done that before on accident, but I have had colleagues or friends and clients that would message me and say, oh, Katie, oh my God, this person had signed a roommate release and I did not have that paperwork right on top, or, it's called a roommate promotion. Sometimes your software fails you where their name is on there, and you have managers that float too. So they may not know that John Doe should not still be on the lease with Jane Doe, that, all kind of things happen that cause that to be the case where somebody's been signed off and they file on them in error. That was one of our scenarios that we've presented, not only to the ACLU, but like with United Way and other stakeholders, and even Safe Harbor, your domestic violence shelters that are trying to stop someone who is the victim from having an eviction record. That's a whole nother thing that's out there. Because gosh, it's bad enough you're in that situation and then have an eviction filed.
Exactly. That's punitive to me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we'll see where it goes. We're going to present that to them and had to get board approval because a committee can't sign off on that, so to speak. And if Chris listens, he'll remember our conversation. He's like, you're meeting with who? And the AC who? And he said, no. Like, I don't think I've ever been so quiet in a meeting, Shanae. I let I'm remembering respondeat superior there. Like it's, let other people.
That's funny.
Yes. I'm like, not me needs to speak on this. But when we had our meeting, I yielded to, our general counsel, with our state association and some other folks to have the bulk of those conversations. But I'm glad that we're having those conversations because
absolutely,
we're leaving Americans unhoused. And it's sometimes to no fault of their own when it's an error. The management company people are capable of making mistakes, and there should be a remedy for that. And I don't know the law here, but if somebody accidentally did that to me, I would be keen to go.
I'd be furious.
I'd probably see them in court about. I don't know what the cause of action would be. But like I know that there's probably an attorney out there that would know what that cause of action would be. And you'd probably have to go through hell and high water to get that off of your record. But if we could just do it by statute, or then we'd be able to make a dent in what we're facing. So with this year we're in February, is there anything, I know, right? Still in February, and it's hopefully going to get warmer. We were talking about that. It's so cold. Aside from the warm weather, what are you looking forward to this year?
I think work, like as far as the industry is concerned, I think the one thing that I'm looking forward the most to is probably, see, this is how I know I'm a nerd. The Rouse Legal Conference,
Yes.
which is my absolute favorite. And for those that might be listening, it used to be called GART and like something else before that. But it's NAA's, legal conference where basically, people who have a lot to do with evictions kind of just like get around and start kvetching about how terrible it is to evict somebody in like California or New York or something. I was selected to be on the Rouse Advisory Council this year. So essentially, like one of the legal people who's in charge with coming up with like an agenda of topics to speak about. So I'm really, really looking forward to that, especially like with the way the climate is now. We get so many questions about how is ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, how is ICE's presence going to affect the tenants at my property? Like we're getting questions about that a lot. So I'm just like really interested to see like the new topics that we're able to come up with, especially with the changing of the presidential administration. For those that don't know about Rouse, it is usually mid to late July. I will be there. I haven't gotten an invite yet from my boss, but I will be there because that's my favorite conference and I don't want anybody else to go but me. So not from my office anyway. That's my favorite one. Like I nerd out about that conference. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that's going to shake out. But yeah, I guess we'll see, right?
For sure. And I'm excited to go too. I think we've been together in Chicago for that conference.
That was so much fun.
It was.
God, that was fun.
It was. I got in early and took an architectural tour.
Nice.
Yeah, on the boat. And then of course, I follow culture, and then like Jamie Foxx was on the same river.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, not too long later, but going there and hearing all the topics and the challenges that are facing our clients, directly related to what you guys do and what we do every single day, like that, and nerding out too. For me, it's like learning so much more and just expanding my horizons. And this year it's going to be in Denver. I've never been to Denver. Have you been?
Oh my God, that's one of my favorite cities. That's why I'm like, like, yay, the Mile High City.
Yes, I'm so excited. I cannot wait. We're going to have such a blast at that conference this year.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And I know that you work all the time. And I know you have a cat. I meant to send you this TikTok I saw the other day. It was a lady and she was like putting on a performance for her cat. I'm like, I picture this is how Shanae
No. Okay, maybe sometimes.
So what do you do to wind down? I know you're a baseball fan, but how do you wind down? You're so busy.
I travel. I tend to travel a lot. That's something I picked up in like my baby attorney days. I'm sure people listening might be aware of the time that I went to Russia without letting anybody know. But I had to let my paralegal know. So I let Lynette McPherson know. I let her know because she was like, "You're not going anywhere unless you unless you keep in touch with me." But yeah, I love picking up and traveling. I was into rock climbing for about 2 years or so. But then I had an ingrown toenail, so then I had to stop that. I'm like, rock climbing is like, that's like a really good activity to get like your toes and stuff messed up. I read a lot. I tend to read a lot as well. But I'm like very spontaneous. I might, be at home one day and I'm like, oh, I want to go roller skating. Oh, I want to go bowling. I'll get up and do that. But I just like having fun, man. I just like having fun. And I think I can do that anywhere.
Oh, for sure. I didn't know you went to Russia. When was this?
Yeah, girl. That was, oh my God, that was a decade ago. That was in 2015 now. Yep.
Wow.
That was a while ago.
That's awesome.
Didn't tell my parents about it either.
Oh, I'm sure I could imagine.
They found out much later. They were like, what? They were not happy. They were not happy.
They would have thought they were being punked if they got like some kind of crazy call.
Right.
They're like, my
Exactly.
she's not in Russia. There's no way.
Greetings, comrade.
And you went to Indonesia and Bali?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I went to Bali for my sabbatical as well. I have earned my second sabbatical. I just haven't like decided like where I want to go or what I want to do yet, which is why I haven't taken it. So stay tuned. It's going to be somewhere. It's going to be somewhere. Maybe Thailand or something like that, but we'll see.
Oh, that'll be fun. Yep. I would love to hear about that. I had a coworker who was from Thailand. He made us try so much food. I did not realize like their culture
is so good. That food smacks, man.
And you share. That's the thing. Like you don't just order your plate of food. And a lot of us grew up in South Carolina, so you make your plate, right?
Exactly.
Well, this gentleman, his name's Chris Prackett, and he was one of my residents, and he would come into the office to use the Wi-Fi, and he was selling Primerica, like insurance and stuff, and he would chat people up. Like I was short-staffed a good bit, so I was the one-woman show, and so he would chat people up, and he would have them entertained while I would help people, and finally one day I was like, why don't I pay you to do this? Do you want to be a leasing consultant?
Hello.
So I hired him, and he expanded my horizon so much and made me want to go see this beautiful country that he was talking about and experience, the foods from there. Like we had our lunch that we'd gotten, and he's like, okay, this is going to be total culture shift for you guys. I don't want you to order just your plate. I'm going to be eating off your plate. And it wouldn't matter what we had. Like the culture was so strong. You could have ordered not even Thai food. And he's like grabbing your French fry or whatever, but they share. Exactly. They share. And he encouraged us to try so many things. I'm excited. Hopefully you'll get to go there and you'll have to tell us what that was about.
Absolutely.
And as we're winding down, what advice would you give to a woman who looks like you, who's interested in becoming an attorney?
I would say, that mantra that, that people that look like me are always taught, sometimes you have to work twice as hard to even get a seat at the table.
I've heard that.
That's true. That is very true. Unfortunately, like it is 2025 and, like a lot of people are like, why the hell is racism still a problem? That is the $1 million question. I don't know why, that kind of discrimination and bigotry is still alive and well. But, a lot of the times, although it's completely unfair, like you really do have to work twice as hard as everyone else to even get to the status quo sometimes. And it can be hard, but I think my biggest piece of advice would be keep going. Keep going. If you feel like you're being blocked at one avenue, hey, back it on up and go down another road. Just keep going. Don't stop. Like never give up. Never give up, because you are going to be your own worst enemy and your own biggest supporter. So just keep going. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. And you know that I am a huge hip hop fan, huge music fan. I always ask my guests, what is your favorite song and why? Or do you have a favorite song?
Oh God. A lot of my favorites tend to rotate a lot, like favorite anything, favorite color, favorite food. They all, I'm so indecisive. I can never pick one. I think right now, let's see. Right now, my favorite song is probably off of Kendrick Lamar's GNX album, which is the album that he just released. And it's called Hey Now. I love that song. So like, if I need like a little pick me up or something in the middle of the day, I play that song because it kind of gets you going a little bit. Yep.
Awesome. I'll have to listen to that here in just a little bit. Yes, ma'am, you do. Yes, I love that. And I get some of my best work done when I'm listening to music. I have the news on all day to know what's going on.
Exactly.
But I'll have to listen. I'm, of course, huge Kendrick Lamar fan, and his performance at the Super Bowl. I hope people got the symbolism. Like the symbolism. Like if people looked at it and like, oh, that was boring. No, because you wouldn't watch it.
No, it wasn't.
You wouldn't watch it with this eye. You got to watch with this eye. Your third eye. It was very symbolic.
Yep.
And he has brought a lot to the rap industry and to the culture, to the industry. I love listening to him, and my son does too. So when Jackson gets home, he's always introducing me to new artist, but
Yep.
that's one that we can agree on. He calls what you and I would listen to like the old heads. I'm like, I'm not an
The old
head.
head stuff.
I'm like, no, old
I'm
head.
like, fine, I'll allow it, sure.
Exactly. It's like, all right, Jackson. Well, thank you again, Shanae, for
Of
coming
course.
on. And thank you guys for listening in today on this episode of The Real Spill here on the Multifamily Media Network. We'll see you back next time.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of The Real Spill, a podcast where I spill on all things multifamily advocacy and how we as industry professionals can work together with our elected officials, stakeholders, and allies to bring about change for the rental housing industry. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've learned something new. Now, go be a voice. Until next time, Spills out.